Hey everybody, Adam Savage, and I'm at the National Parks Museum Conservation Lab with Fran here. Hello.
Hi.
Fran, tell me which lab we're in right now.
This is the Organic Objects Lab. So I like to work on anything that was once living and is now dead. So that's organic material. Yeah, that could be animal material or plant material.
Okay.
And we're really fortunate that right now, a project that I have in the lab is a collection of taxidermy that is from the Fire Island National Seashore.
Okay.
That's a National Park Service site on Long Island, specifically Mastic Beach. There's a historic estate that was owned by William Floyd, and he was one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence.
Oh,
so
okay.
Founding father.
Yeah.
And 8 generations of his family lived at the estate. And one of them, his great-great-grandson, was an avid naturalist, an amateur naturalist. He would hunt on the property and then also mounted a lot of the birds that he killed.
So this was mounted by the grandson?
Yes, exactly,
Wow.
exactly. And I would like to point out that the grandson died in 1943.
Okay.
And we believe that this bald eagle was done in 1907 based off of a photo album that we have from the family. So that was before the Bald Eagle Protection Act.
Fair.
So yes,
Fair,
yeah,
totally
so,
fair.
Yeah, so this was, I think bald eagles were very popular on Fire Island and on Long Island back in the day. But as with a lot of species in the United States, they had a decline from hunting, but then also from pesticide application. A common thing for bald eagles. So fortunately, with the rebound of bald eagles, there is a nesting pair there now.
Oh,
and there have been since 2015, so it's a great success story. But something that I'd like to point out is that they think that another naturalist came to Fire Island and took photographs of some of the bald eagles flying around.
Oh, wow.
And that photograph is what they think they modeled the Liberty Quarter after in 1925.
What?
So yeah, so not only like bald eagles have a really interesting tie to Fire Island.
Yeah.
And the naturalist who took those images, he was actually a curator at the American Museum of Natural History at the time. So a lot of intertwining stories from this park site. So the taxidermy represents both scientific, studying nature and all of that, but then also cultural, since it was the great-great-grandson of a founding father who created these. And that also dictates how we treat them.
I have so many questions.
Yeah.
But what is your main task with this beautiful bird?
Well, this one, if I turn it around, you'll see what our main task was at first. It was cleaning. Yeah. So we see this side has not been cleaned, but this side has. So we believe that this is probably, now that means that this bird, if it was mounted prior to 1907, actually, because the dated photograph that we have with the bird in it was 1907. Mm-hmm. But, I'm sure it was on continuous display in that historic home since then, so over 100 years old. And we're just really not sure how often the family cleaned it until then. The park site does have routine housekeeping, right. But it does take a special, once it gets to be this thick of an accumulation of dust, it really requires conservation care.
So you can't just bring over your shop vacuum.
Exactly, because you do risk damaging the object.
And it's like 100 years of skin scales and dust and
soot from a fireplace.
Sure. Oh,
so it's not just this nice fluffy dust, it's also, smoke from a fireplace, which is typically pretty greasy and also very abrasive. So it can be very difficult to clean off, especially feathers, because the feather vein, it looks like it's a solid mass to us, but it's actually, it's almost like fingers coming off of it that are called barbs. And then in between those barbs are little tiny barbules that will zip up like a zipper, and that's what keeps the feather together.
And every bit of that is where charcoal and dust
accumulate.
And that stuff can get
exactly.
stuck.
So it can be very difficult to clean. Even on this one, we've also see these nice white puffs here and there, and that is inactive mold that's growing on top of the dust layer. So that's yet another reason why you should clean your taxidermy or clean your family heirlooms or clean anything, is because dusty layers also invite mold growth, because dust is hygroscopic, so it'll hold on to moisture.
Oh, amazing.
And it'll just attract mold and insects. So the main thing, was the cleaning. And
now with the cleaning, will his head brighten up?
No.
Oh no!
So
That's not just the accumulation of dust.
It's
then.
not. So we do see, that overall gray tinge to it. We also see a little bit of yellowing, but what we see as well are just the feathers have been stripped. So can you see that it does almost look like little whiskers that are coming off of it?
Zipped them all off.
Exactly, and that is damage from ultraviolet radiation.
That's
so
what
sunlight.
that is. So it's not a bug eating those.
No, it's not. It's not. There could be, I'm not saying that there's no bugs on here,
Sure.
but that is kind of textbook example of what happens specifically to white feathers.
Gotcha.
Because white feathers don't have pigment in them, so it makes, there's like less in the structure.
Right. So they're
more
those
susceptible to
polymer
damage.
chains all get busted up by the...
Exactly, specifically the disulfide bonds within the keratin. And so when that happens, it just makes them shatter. So they kind of do it on their own, similar to silk. Or if you touch it, they're prone to shattering as well. So not only do we have sooty dust nestled in those tiny barbules, that's really difficult to clean and really difficult to get out, but also if we tried to get in there and clean out,
You just make it
might break
all
away.
look like that.
And then one final thing, the kicker, is that as white feathers specifically, but also any feather, as they age and those bonds are breaking, it also no longer repels water, and instead water alone will make it shatter. So if I went to wet clean, so we can wet clean the brown feathers that are okay, but we cannot wet clean the white feathers. And that's really good to know, and that's something that conservation professionals know, but other people don't, because materials change as they age. So
Someone at home might think, what's the harm if that worked on all 90% of this?
Exactly. And then you get to like the main event, especially for bald eagles, and you end up making it look like a turkey vulture because you thin it out so much.
The ignominy.
Exactly. How dare they? So, and this is no offense to taxidermists. Taxidermists are the artist creating the artwork, but a lot of times they don't do restoration because it's a very different material. When you mount the animal and when you mount birds, the water will just roll right off. But on this, it won't, and it'll just kind of cause chaos.
So what is the plan with that?
The plan on this one, so what we think we're gonna do, we've been testing out some materials, is we will take poultry feathers that we've purchased just from a art supply store because it's legal to have. It's illegal for us to have bald eagle feathers, especially since we're not a natural history museum with the Park Service. This is a service center where I'm just a conservation lab, so I don't have a drawer full of bald eagles. Right. I promise I don't.
So I love it. Somewhere there really is a drawer full of bald eagles.
There is. At some natural history museum, there definitely is, but it's not here, and I would love to see it. So instead, I have purchased some feathers, but they are too bright.
Sure.
As you can probably imagine, they have been dyed. They probably even have optical whiteners in it, like paper does, all that. Yeah. So I'm gonna have to artificially dirty them up. So probably painting them with a certain paint that I have, and then adding kind of like a faux soot layer on it using pastels.
So it's going to end up being roughly this shade.
Yes, yeah. We will try to see if any of those pan pastels, if any of the feathers do have enough integrity that maybe we could add a little bit of the pastels or a dry pigment to try to brighten it up a little bit. But we'll definitely move very carefully, and if we are noticing too much breakage, then we'll back off and we will just accept it as it is.
Right.
And I think that's okay too, because this is a historic object, and if people see this, they're gonna say, yes, that's an old bald eagle,
Sure.
But we do wanna try to have the specimen regain some of its confidence, some of its, it's special. Like I don't like the thinking about the animals having died in vain.
Sure.
And I think that's one reason why I like working on taxidermy. We want them to look nicer.
Yeah.
So taking care of it, and then also trying to add things back in to make it look a little bit better.
I'm curious, as someone who works on these things all the time, if you have, his head looks a little bit flat on top.
Yeah.
Is that accurate? Is it maybe a little bit flat?
It is. And in the historic photograph that we have, we can see it already looked like that.
Oh.
So in this one, there's the bald
there it
eagle.
is. Look at it.
And it already has that kind of flat look to it.
So if that was part of the design of the original maker, is that something you guys want to maintain, or would you? Oh, you would.
Yeah.
Because it's historically significant.
It's historically significant. Yeah.
So even if he was mounted where his neck was weird, you'd hold to that because that's his piece of artwork.
Yeah, we would say, hey, look at how William Floyd mounted this. Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
That's still also got to be tough, though.
It is sometimes, because it's nice, when we are able to make things look like their living counterpoint, or we want, as conservators, we really want things to look perfect.
Of course.
But we go by first making things structurally stable. That's kind of like the do no harm kind of ethos that we have. Make sure it's structurally stable, use really good materials, because we want it to last to the next generation. In fact, generation after generation for as long as possible. So doing something like moving the head on a piece of old taxidermy, once it's aged, that's a pretty invasive technique that would require a lot of humidification, and we would really risk skin disintegration, as I mentioned, the feathers falling apart.
And just trying to change the gesture of that.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. So sometimes there might be like a little tweak we can do here and there to something, but
so it strikes me that there are different ways of approaching taxidermy depending upon its age.
Depending on its age and then where it's going to be displayed probably as well. If we did have a big diorama and this bald eagle was in there, even if it was old, if it was meant to represent its living counterpart, then we might go a little bit farther and take those chances. Because we would want it to represent the artwork as it should be seen, which is a very realistic bald eagle. But yeah, this is going to go back on display in the historic estate. They will also be celebrating, of course, our nation's 250th anniversary next year. And then there were actually only 4 delegates from New York who signed the Declaration of Independence. So William Floyd is pretty famous, I think, in that area.
And you guys will also be doing restoration on the mount as well?
Yeah, we can see that the branch that it's on is riddled with holes. And
Lots
those are
of people moved in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, it was a very popular neighborhood. And that was with powder post beetles.
Okay.
And so again, it's always the larvae, it's always the young ones that do the damage.
Kids these days.
Exactly. Same old story. And they moved in and they, made their home in there. And then when they became adults, they flew away. So we call those flight holes.
Okay.
So yeah, the flight holes are all those. And but we like to fill those. We've been playing around with using furniture wax.
Oh, yeah.
And just kind of plugging those into the holes. We could also use a lightweight spackle if we wanted to kind of plug in there and then paint it to blend in with the rest of the branch.
Right.
And that can be important because then that helps you monitor for future infestations. So then,
if more holes show up, right?
Exactly. And that's why, too, on the taxidermy, let's say this one had an infestation here and it lost a lot of the feathers, I would want to go ahead and get out all of those detached feathers and clear away all of the evidence of pests, and then fill it in with my materials, so that in the future, if I see a shed skin of a domestic beetle larva, then I go, oh no, that's new, because I already cleaned it, so that must be a new infestation. And then we need to go do the procedures to mitigate that infestation.
Gotcha.
Do you know what that is? What the museum technique is?
I've heard, we've been talking about it. You freeze it.
Yes,
I love this idea.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought you'd just pour liquid nitrogen all over it.
No, or just like blast it with mothballs or something. So in the past, that's what it would have been. But because we like to, go by integrated pest management practices. And so we try to use avoid chemicals at all costs, I should say. And so we would wrap this in plastic and then put it in a deep freezer that's already at like -40 degrees.
Right.
And then it goes in there and it shocks them. So they, you don't want it to go down in temperature after you already put it in, because then the larva might, kind of go with it. And they're like, oh, cool, whatever, it's fine. No, you want to shock them.
Okay.
And then you keep it in there for like a week and then bring it back out. And then you clean off all the evidence and then continue monitoring it to make sure that you did get everything. But that's what we do. And it works relatively well on a wide variety of materials. But what can be difficult about taxidermy is that the specimens come with their own insulation. So it can be a little difficult because all the feathers and the downy feathers are insulating the larva.
To get it all the way through the cold. Right, right.
Yeah, exactly. So I've had that happen where I've been like, oh, nature's too smart, you know?
Now I'm thinking about otter fur.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
Yeah. Very difficult.
A million hair follicles per inch.
Yeah.
Are the feet original, the real eagle feet?
They are, but as you can tell, they're painted.
That's what I was wondering in the beak too.
In the beak too, exactly. These areas will lose their color after the animal dies.
Right.
So,
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so on a lot of the specimens, you'll see that a very typical thing. Something that's not happening on this bald eagle that's surprising to me is that the feet themselves aren't, oozing.
Oh, that's something that they like to do?
Yes, yeah, because for bird feet, it's really difficult to remove all of the soft tissues, the tendons and things, and the fatty deposits that are deep within the feet. And so a taxidermist will try to strip out as much as possible, clean it out as much as possible, but the bones are still in there. Right. And so they'll just compact it with a certain type of preservative material, any number of things. Modern days, it would be borax that you would pack in there as a degreaser, a little bit of a pest deterrent. But over time, any soft tissue that's left will kind of oxidize and ooze to the surface. And so you'll see sometimes paint flaking off because of that.
Oh, so
or if you see it on the skin, it'll kind of disintegrate the skin a little bit and it'll deposit onto the surface, and we call it fat burn. So if you see like orangey areas, it's the fat burn.
So the taxidermist then took these feet, turned them upside down, sliced up every finger, pulled everything out.
Yes.
And get the claws back in.
Yeah, well, the claws were probably still attached to the skin.
Okay.
So he flayed it, I'm assuming, well, yeah, we know it was him. It was William Floyd. Yeah. He flayed it open as much as possible, stripped out everything, lined it with some kind of material to preserve it, and then sewed it back up. And there's also some metal wires that extend through through the feet and then to the body, to the mannequin of the bird. And this time period, it probably would have been either cotton batting, or it could have been a plant material called sisal or sisal.
Yeah.
It's a loose material that you bind up and you make it look like the carcass of the animal. And then even like kind of into the neck, there'd probably be a wire there. And we know that this is the real beak. Even though it's painted, it is the real beak.
You know that it's the real beak.
Yeah. Just by looks, but also by age. At that time period, they could have maybe used carved wood, but it looks much better than that. So
it's so lovely.
Yeah, it's really nice. And so you can see a little bit like the skin here around the eyes.
Yeah.
That is kind of that orangey material, just aged skin. Not quite fat burn yet, but we probably will add a little bit of pigment in there because that doesn't look fleshy.
Right, just
that
to make
looks
it pop
old.
a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you going to do anything to touch up the paint on the beak?
We will look at reference images and decide on that. Yeah, I've worked on a collection of bald eagles at the Alaska State Museum many, many years ago, and all of them had different colors, and we were just joking that like they ranged from Cheeto to Cool Ranch Dorito, and like with Frito, like everything in between. Like it covered all the snack chips.
Amazing.
But this one's not too bad. So yeah, so we'll look up reference images and decide on that. And an interesting tidbit. The curator at the park forwarded me some conservation treatment documents from the birds from 40 years ago, from 1985, and they received treatment or restoration at Schwindemann's, which is a taxidermy studio in New Jersey, which has been around for like 100 years or something. So, and I've heard of them. They're kind of a known name.
Right.
And so we got to see what a taxidermist would have done to them 40 years ago. And on other ones, it was cleaning them with petroleum distillates and replacing some feathers here or there, or repainting the feet, repainting things. And they mentioned resanding the bases. So I think they may have done this one.
That's mid-century.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's, I think, maybe why the feet look so good, is because maybe they were redone then.
Fair.
So yeah, so it's wonderful that we have that information. So we'll put that into our treatment reports as well to let future folks know like what has happened to it. And so, that I think it's just all interesting to me. And it's, then I just become yet another part of the story of this object and of this bald eagle.
It had never occurred to me before, even though I've loved taxidermy forever, that there's such a fundamental difference between birds and mammals.
Yeah.
And all of the challenges and unique difficulties of each one.
Yeah, it really is. So it's kind of nice when you do get a collection of like just birds or just mammals to work on. And we haven't even gotten into fish and reptiles.
Oh God, right, of course.
Yeah, I unfortunately don't have any in here, but they're wild because their skins are so thin. They're usually not tanned.
Right.
You know, and then for fish, like if it's an older fish, that is the real skin. But usually fish mounts these days, it's not. There's no skin anywhere. They just have a form and they paint it.
They cut the horn off your sailfish and put it on a fiberglass sailfish.
Yeah, exactly. So so that's a whole nother ball game. But yeah, I could show you the feathers that we're going to use for the fill.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so this is a special kind of watercolor that we use that has a conservation resin mixed in with it so that we can use ethanol to solubilize it, to use the paint instead of water, since sometimes skins can be,
amazing.
Yeah, so that's really nice. So I used that to tone these feathers, and here, this just poultry feathers that I got from an art supply store.
And you gave them this.
There's a bigger one. Yeah, I just kind of painted them with that. But that was still a little too white. It needed undertones of yellow. So then I went back to the drawing board and got some undertones of yellow.
Oh, look at that. Right.
Yeah, so you can still see, like I only painted, in that area. And then now I could go in and use the pan pastels and kind of like pounce that on where I need to make it look like the soot that's on there.
Oh my God,
and I'll trim this
soot.
even more. Yeah, so here's the full feather. You know, and then trimming up, but then you can trim it even smaller and smaller and smaller as needed. So these will probably be placed in there, but
when you place them in there, do you glue them or do you just sort of get them into place?
you can do both. Yeah, you can kind of do a mechanical action where they'll kind of lock in with the existing feathers, especially if there's enough. Yeah, or you could drag it through just a scant amount of an acrylic adhesive that's nice and flexible, that adheres well to skin. I've also taken embroidery forms and stretched out a material on top of that you can kind of tuck the feather into, and you can build up many layers of feather and create your own bald eagle toupee if needed, depending on how big of an area you need to fill.
It is called a bald eagle. He's in desperate need of a toupee.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a lot out there. They really need the help. So yeah, there's a few different ways to go around it, depending on what the needs are. So for this one, obviously, or I shouldn't say obviously, but using the least amount of adhesive possible is what's best.
Right.
Because we, kind of want to do the least that is required.
Just enough to keep it in place.
Exactly.
Almost nothing. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's another area in which conservators need to have restraint, because sometimes you think more is more, but a lot of times, less is more.
That's usually solved for me by stepping way back as often as possible and be like, oh, that's wrong.
Yeah, or making sure you eat lunch at an appropriate time. Like all the mistakes are made right before lunchtime.
Oh my goodness. So sometimes I would imagine sometimes you've come in here on a Monday morning and been like, what was I thinking on Friday?
Yes. Yeah. Well, no, not for me. Someone, I'm sure that happened. No, but yeah, I think sometimes, you just, many times actually, I'll be working on something and it's not quite right, or the color's not quite right, or like the fill just isn't working for me, and I have to let it go, and then I'll come back the next day and try again, and then it'll work then.
It's like there's too many variables and you get lost in all of them equally.
Yeah.
And you gotta, that's fascinating.
Exactly.
I always knew that it was a really challenging art form, especially because I've seen so few amazing taxidermies.
Yeah.
But I didn't know how deep that rabbit hole goes, and it goes really deep.
Well, and specifically, art conservators who specialize on taxidermy, it's a pretty young specialization. There aren't that many of us. I can count on two hands how many people who do it. So we're all kind of like still learning as well. Like it's only been a couple decades where we've been kind of focused on these materials. Because it can be difficult. If you do have a natural science collection, it's usually magnitudes larger than other types of collections. Usually it's millions of specimens.
Right.
Instead of like a couple hundred
Dozens,
or something.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But the things on display, this is an art form. So when you have taxidermy on display, that should also be treated with the same amount of respect and reverence as other types of art materials.
Phenomenal.
And I have some other things to show you on the pheasant, and then some felted fills on a grouse. If you want to see those.
I would love to see felted fills on a grouse.
Okay.
I don't know what any of those words mean.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
This pheasant has the most beautiful chest.
Isn't that wonderful?
The specular lighting on those is so gorgeous.
It's also because our conservation fellow Daisy has already cleaned it.
Fair.
So it did not look like that before.
Fair.
But and in fact, I have these really great. These are pieces of paper that she cleaned onto on the tail. So it's like the ghost of the tail. So you can see how dirty. Yeah. And I'll turn it around really quickly.
So she's using an archival paper and wetting it a little bit?
Well, you slide it underneath, and this is the same technique that that Elena did on the bald eagle, but you can slide it underneath the feather, and then you use a paintbrush and you brush on, your liquid that you're using, and then kind of, keep brushing as long as the feather can handle it.
Right.
And then we call it the pull, but you pull away and you get to see this fantastic little print that you can
deeply satisfying.
Use to figure out what you see in the scene or whatnot, depending on maybe you test your luck. It's like, what do you see in here?
Oh, it's a Rorschach test. It's a taxidermy Rorschach.
Exactly. So I'll turn it back around. We'll see what else Daisy has been doing on this one. You can see this is another great example of when areas need to be repainted. So the wattle of this bird, or not quite the wattle, but just kind of around the eyes, on this side has not been painted, but then on the other side she has toned that.
And so that is a correct tone for what this pheasant should look like.
Exactly. And so to figure that out, she looked up a bunch of reference images online, but all of those reference images were for living pheasants that were, out in the field, probably doing their mating calls, things like that. So they were very, 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 very red. So instead, we kind of looked up images of also older taxidermy mounts to maybe see what's somewhere in the middle between so far gone that it's faded and lost versus new, completely new. And then this is what we decided on. And
I'm guessing also a consideration is if it was super bright red, the audience would come and look at it and be like, something's wrong.
Yeah, because it wouldn't match the rest of it.
Right.
Exactly. Because we're not going to be able to make this look, again, this is a really old piece. We're not going to make it look too much like its living counterpart because we want it to still represent the fact that William Floyd made it.
Right.
So we have to strike a balance.
So what your fidelity is too is a moving target piece by piece.
Yeah, exactly. And something that's really obvious that this is not really representing its living counterpart is this metal wire.
Yeah, his antenna.
Yeah, exactly. I like to think it holds a top hat, but it doesn't. So you'll see this. There's actually on a few other birds as well. That's just part of the armature from when they made it. Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. So when the skin dried and when all the internal components kind of smushed a little and kind of relaxed over time and relaxed, but then also the skin constricting, you end up with wires poking out of the head, and that is not an uncommon thing. But this one is pretty long, but we've been discussing it amongst ourselves, and we'll talk about it with the curator from the park. We're not going to snip it. Because I think it does kind of tell the story. And I was like, William did that. Yeah.
I was picturing everyone gathering around while you got out a pair of nippers and were like, all right, here goes.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I'd be like, but we won't be doing that.
I want to say, just as a professional courtesy, the paint on this side of the face looks 100% genuine.
Oh, that's great.
It does not yield any evidence that it's paint to me.
Perfect. Yeah, I will definitely tell Daisy. She'll be pleased to hear that. Yeah, but I'm very happy with that. And then another thing that she's done, so yet again, some maybe pest issues with the feet. So the feet are very tasty to pests. And on this side, you can see, I'll use my quill to point out, we have a little bit of skin loss here, and then also here it's kind of split open, and there's a little bit of that metal armature in the back. So we had a couple areas that were like that as well on the other foot. And oh my gosh, am I even going to be able to tell? Oh, okay. She's using toned wax here.
Oh, wow.
And you can see that she
sculpted more scales.
Exactly. So we'll also try to paint over top of that to blend it even more. Or another thing that she could add to the top surface is a little bit of gold beater skin. Are you familiar with this material?
Gold feeder skin?
Gold beater.
Gold beater skin.
So this is ox intestine. And this is what it has just been really processed, and it's been actually kind of beaten itself together to form one long strip. And this is what they would do. They would use this as the material between pieces of gold when they would pound it to make gold leaf.
Right.
Yeah, because it's nice and flexible, but it's super strong.
And super light.
Yeah, so it's just basically a nice little sheet of collagen.
Oh.
And so we can use this for a lot of different sculpting situations. I've used this when there was pest damage and an area of loss on a rattlesnake rattle. You know, I just kind of, because it's essentially, it's a very similar type of material.
Do you use
it's a
like
certain kind of protein.
A natural animal glue for something like that?
No, I'm still going to stick with my adhesive, my acrylic adhesive.
Gotcha.
Yeah, because it's flexible. Because the skin will continue to fluctuate with changes in the environment. And so if I were to use like a hide glue, that's not very flexible over time. And so the skin would pull against those repaired spots and probably start tearing in other places.
You were saying on the bald eagle that you looked at reference about the flatness of the head. So have you looked, I'm assuming that the goal is to find as many pictures as you can of the collection to make sure that the poses are original.
Yeah, exactly. That's always kind of a bonus if we're able to have those, so we can really tell, especially for that. You know, we could make a case. We do have a historic. Now that you're saying that, it's jogging my memory. But we do have that picture of the pheasant, and so it'll be interesting to look at it and see if we can see any of that sticking out at the time. Yeah. And if we can't, then that's a different kind of conversation with the curator. Maybe we will be coming in with trembling hands and trimming it off a little bit. Yeah. But we'll see. But it's always great to have a discussion with the curators who are kind of in charge of researching and taking care of collections, but then also community members if an object was made by people in that area. So there are members of the Floyd family, I think, who are still alive today, but they're not. I think we do really rely on the curator for the park to speak for all of them, and for the park and for all of us as since the park collections are all of our collections, which is really beautiful. Great. But another really cool thing I want to show you is I'm going to have Elena talk to you about some felted fills that she has for a grouse. Are you interested?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Hello, Elena.
Hi.
Nice to see you.
Good to see you.
I'm hearing that you're going to talk to me about tufted felting on the grouse. I don't know what any of those words mean.
Close. So here we've got a grouse, also from the Fire Island collection, and it's exhibiting a lot of similar condition issues to the rest of the birds, such as these feathers would be white, but they are gray just from the soot and dust collection. And we've got some feather loss, some barbule loss, if you remember your feather anatomy. But the main issue that we have here is the hole.
The whole back of his head is gone.
Yeah, so he's missing a part of his skull. This is the actual bird's skull that you can see.
Wow.
And that could be from when it was hunted originally, or maybe there was some sort of physical impact after it was mounted. But either way, that's something that we would want to fix. And we have a few options. So one of them, when I'm looking at this, I can see that there's some cotton batting stuffed between the skin and the skull.
That was put there. Do we know if that's original? Okay, so
so that's original to give the head more of the proper shape. So I was thinking about recreating that to give the rest of the skull the proper shape as well before we start doing some feather fills. So
that you'd lay in some cotton batting as the first layer. And obviously I'm assuming that the first step would be you're just making sure nothing's going on in there that you need to arrest before you go over it.
Right. No secret pests, no fat burns, nothing to cause more damage internally when I make a fill. Right. But yeah, so you could do cotton batting. That's one option. And we've got some loose cotton there that we could have used, but it doesn't quite give me the shape that I wanted. And there's also polyester batting as well, which is nice because it's less tasty to pests.
Oh yeah, nothing likes to eat it.
Right.
Fair.
But also there's a shape issue there. So what we ended up deciding on was wool felting.
Okay.
So you start with this, which is
like
just...
the felting that everyone does with the...
Yeah, exactly. So this is just loose wool fibers. They're nice and long. And you basically take a tiny needle, a felting needle, and you can just... I've got a piece of foam on the back here, and you just stab it over and over and over and over. And this gives you like a compact little surface that you can shape And this is just an embroidery hoop with a bit of spun bond polyester.
Okay.
Which gives you like a nice
something that's easy
surface.
to poke through, but still strong and won't tear.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And for a bird with larger feathers, because you can just stick the feathers directly into this, which also makes it really nice.
So you will...
You can see that with the little guy
Oh,
here.
look at that.
So this is his a small toupee that I made.
Oh my God, it's his actual toupee.
Yeah. So it's just some felted wool on a piece of spun bond polyester. And then we also had some really small feathers, and that'll just lay right in there.
Wow.
Once I get all the feathers on there, which is a whole other thing.
Well, and will you do all the feathers in situ on here, or will you do some of them here and final ones once it's in place?
So that's a good question. I think I'll do most of them once it's in place.
Gotcha.
Because we don't have grouse feathers on hand.
Right.
But you can own feathers from any bird that you can eat. So we've got partridge feathers.
Fair.
But the issue with these is they're not quite the right color. Or they're the right shape. So we'll shape them, just cut them into these small little bits. And then I've been toning them with pan pastels to get the right downy color feather. This is where conservation just gets really small.
Yeah. I mean, so how long will you spend repairing this 1 square inch of bird?
Oh, man.
A week?
Yeah, a while.
Wow.
A while, because you don't get it right the first time.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I would imagine, just given the way I do problem solving, that you spend a bunch of time working on this, but also you're trying to wrap your head around the topography in here, right?
Yeah,
trying
exactly.
to put your brain in there.
Yeah, and like get it the correct shape and how it might have been originally. And with the bigger birds, we can just use some tool like this and stick larger feathers in. So that's how Fran has completed repairs on like the heads of bald eagles before. You just can like use it to make it basically a crown of feathers.
Amazing.
That you can overlay. But with something small like this, it just poses a whole different challenge.
I hear it. I hear the challenge in your voice. But it's also, what a thrilling thing, because eventually you'll look up and his head will be whole.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, check back in a week, I guess.
What in this process, from the very beginning to the very end, what is the most difficult part? Is it the final finishing, or is it getting the shape right till you can get to the final finishing?
I mean, I think a lot of it is we just don't have, you can't use the original materials, because how easy would it be if you just had grouse feathers and you could because the shaping is something of itself, but to get things to look like, to replicate things, I think is the most difficult part for me, because you just, like how do you sit there and rack your brain, like how do I make this feather with the perfect striations and the perfect color and the right amount of dirt?
When I have worked on animals of any kind, there's animal replicas. There's always this moment when it's formed enough that I feel like I make eye contact. Like I feel like there's an actual being there for a second, and it's the most fun. Like, whoo! Do you get that?
Yeah. When we were cleaning the fox earlier, I noted, I was like, man, it just feels like I'm just petting it over and over. Yeah. And it's just really nice to interact with these animals in a way that you would never be able to do in the wilderness, like getting to see them this up close and personal.
Right.
Yeah.
Elena, this has been fascinating. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching that video. Stickers! We have 4 brand new sticker packs for sale at adamsavage.com, and we have stickers to satisfy everybody in your life. We have right up front a Welcome Maker sticker pack that's got the tested logo, measure once, cut twice, more tested logos, Adam, Welcome Maker, Savage Industries, San Francisco. This is great for the beginning maker to start to dress up their toolboxes. We also have Logo Mojo with just some of our big tested logos and the Katakana logo and some fun stuff. Oh, dude, that is awesome. I hadn't even seen that one before. Okay, Logo Mojo. Then we've got Atomisms. There's always more room on the Z-axis. The tested, always be knolling. It's not a problem to solve. It's a process to manage. Oh yeah, this is great. And then finally, we've got Stick Happens, which is for the screw-ups. Measure once, curse twice. We've got Adam eating everything in sight. We have Savage Industry logos. Oh yeah, demerit badge for going down the rabbit hole. The worn out tested Katakana logo. Dude, there are stickers here to satisfy every sticker fetish in your life. AdamSavage.com. I cannot wait to see in the comments what you have adorned with these stickers. Thank you. Back to your YouTube rabbit holes.